Then in that case, why don't we start with attendance? Susan Messino, hi.
Here.
Ann Erickson. Bill Rice. Tim Walzak.
He's here.
I saw you.
Yeah.
He's with us. Marjorie Winters. Hi, Marjorie.
Sorry. Hi. Here.
Hi, no problem. You're on double duty.
Yeah, you got this little guy.
I'm here. Dave Bush. Hi. Helen Peterson. I saw Helen.
Can you see me now?
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm here, but how do I get on?
If you're on the iPad, I think the icon is in the top. Is it the top right?
There'll be a picture of a camera, Helen. You can just click on that.
Click on, hold on, what am I supposed to click on? It won't stay down, that little bar. Click on start video? No.
There you go.
I would do it.
Bingo.
I can't get it to come down on the screen. Hold, be patient with me. Come on. Come on. Okay. Start video. There I am.
Awesome. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I see Maria Capriola, Tom Taberski,
Sure.
Tom Hazel. I see Tom. Mike Glidden, I saw you, or at least your
How are you?
And Tom Fitzgerald. All right, welcome everyone. It's a special meeting of the Open Space Committee, October 7th.
It's a special meeting or regular? It is? Okay.
Do we get any public audience? I didn't see any come through. No, okay. Approval of minutes from September 2nd. Was there any feedback on the minutes?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Line 33 and 34, I don't have it in front of me, but I have my notes where it mentions that I think Maria was making a report to the committee regarding the second public hearing at the Board of Selectmen regarding the Holcomb Street property. And it said something that there were, at that hearing, there were more comments, more so in favor of disposition. I was just wondering if it's possible at this point to ask if you could interject into the minutes a little bit more information, like how many, responses came in, with how many pro and how many con. If anyone needs to go and listen to the tape, whatever, but the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting did not address that either. And I think just for future reference, since this was, a rather intensely discussed issue, I think for future reference for the town, it would be beneficial to know how the townspeople responded to this. So where can we see that information is added to the minutes? And does anyone disagree or agree with me?
Well, one thing we talked about last time was that there was, I think, one sign-on letter and many, many individual comments at the first hearing that were not in favor of this, and two comments that were in favor of it. At the second public hearing, there was, I think, a common sign-on letter in favor of it. So and we did discuss that at the last meeting, so I think it would be appropriate to reflect that in the minutes.
When I went back, Susan, and I read the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meetings when that happened, the only public audience, or let's say letters, read into that meeting were one from Stephen Antonio and one from Lisa Antonio. And then the one other one that you mentioned just now, I think. But if you were to consider the full picture of both hearings and what the response was from the public regarding this, I was concerned that maybe we don't have a good picture of it within the minutes of concerning this item.
I'm just wondering, can we add that to the minutes? Because we really didn't discuss it in that level of detail at the last meeting. So maybe that would have to go into the minutes. for
I'm
this
sorry,
meeting.
Marjorie, I'm not hearing what you're saying. Go slowly, please.
I'm not sure that we discussed it in that level at the last meeting. So I'm not sure if it should go into the last meeting minutes, or whether it would have to go into this minute, the meetings of this minute. You include it in this minute.
Are you suggesting that we discuss it today and have that information put in?
I think that would be the legitimate way. I don't think we can add things to the last meeting minutes if they weren't discussed at the last meeting in that detail.
I'm just
Okay, but
saying that what I,
I'm sorry, what about that little piece about the report into the last meeting that we are discussing now, the minutes, where it says that the Board of Selectmen heard, some comments and there were more for than against. That is the one that is more specific to the minutes of last meeting.
I think that's what was said.
I mean, I did, the comments that I made today are the same comments that I made last time. So I think it's appropriate to put that in the minutes, and that addresses what you're talking about, Helen.
That would be good. As long as it was discussed in the meeting last time, then we can add it to the minutes.
So, Susan, what are you proposing we change the minutes to?
I'm just not looking, I could follow up. I just wanted to clarify that there were 2 public hearings. At the first public hearing, there were, I think, at least a couple dozen individual letters, and then 1 common letter. I don't know how many signatures were on it. I don't know what it said on it. So there was a bunch of letters, multiple dozen people, and 2 people in favor of it. At the second public hearing, there was a common sign-on letter with a bunch of signatures in favor of it.
Yep.
So that is what we clarified at the last open space meeting, which could be clarified in the minutes and is currently not reflected in the minutes.
Okay. Would that be attributed to you? Because I'm just thinking of, I think that the minutes as they stand reflect what Maria shared in her update.
If you look at the tape, I asked this very thing in the meeting. So you can attribute it to me, that's fine.
Okay. So I don't know how to, so would we move to accept the minutes with the change of adding a more detailed description of how many letters were for and against during both public hearings?
Yeah, I think a more complete view of what was received. I think the minutes don't reflect that level that we discussed at the last meeting. Yeah, amended with that small change. I think that's fine.
Maria, did you have a thought?
Yeah, maybe we could just say something to the effect of, Ms. Messina referenced that more people were opposed to the disposition at the first public hearing, period. Would that kind of capture, Susan, what you thought you had said at the last meeting, or no?
No, I specifically said that there were, and I said, correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to clarify that there were several dozen individual letters at the first public hearing and 1 common letter that had many signatures. And at the second public hearing, there was 1 common letter with a bunch of signatures. That's the details.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes with that change attributed to Susan?
So moved?
Second.
Any further conversation?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That motion-
Tiny further conversation, as I also said, which was in the minutes, that I appreciated the additional information, history that was provided at the first public hearing, and I think that's reflected in these minutes. I mean, my main objection after all of this is that we were essentially paying for it. I think people saw it as a swap, and I think that, you know, we ended up paying for it. And anyway, my objection.
So are you proposing a change to the minutes as well, Susan? Okay.
No,
All
I'm
right.
just commenting.
Okay. So that's the minutes. We have a few oral reports. The first is the Parks and Open Space Master Plan.
That would be me, I guess, right?
You're up.
So I appreciate everybody's patience with this whole process. It's been a long process, but I think we're almost there. And if you had a chance to leaf through the link that was sent out with your packet for the newest, I guess the most current draft, you'll see that the Weston and Sampson did take the vast majority of our comments and feedback from the July and August sessions and have incorporated it. I finished checking everything last week, and again, 90% of the feedback I think was corrected, or suggestions were corrected, and the comments were incorporated. The draft we put on the town's website isn't the cleanest one. I'm not really good at putting the tabs in like Tom Fitzgerald, but when we have the it go before the setup before the master plan presentation before the Board of Selectmen, I'll have him put all the tabs in there, so it's a little cleaner read for everyone who's going to be reviewing it. But the date is set for October 26th at 5 p.m. for a special presentation to the Board of Selectmen. We will do this. I'm assuming, Maria, we're going to do it via Zoom. Dan from Weston and Sampson's all set for that. He will have his presentation ready for us at that evening for the Board of Selectmen. But it'll be posted. My intent is to have the drafts posted on the open space page, the Culture, Parks and Recreation Commission page as well, and eventually the document should reside, I believe, on both sites, both pages as well, as it's a reference to many things in town. And certainly if Mike feels it's necessary to have it on the planning site, we can do that as well. But so that's where we are with that. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to do my best to answer those. But it is what it is at this point. It's been a long process, and we're almost done. And we're actually already starting to check boxes off the list. Maria's got her intern, Lena, working on the open space page to incorporate a lot of the information and the links that will be in the appendix. Susan's, very kindly and thoughtfully provided us with a lot of the information to go forward with that. We are working on other parts of the recommendations. As you know, we've been doing the pollinators. We're doing there's going to be an irrigation system installed at the Hopbrook Park that was mentioned in the plan. So little by little, we're already starting to kind of check some boxes off, and I hope as we go through these meetings with the Rec Commission and the Open Space Committee for the next decade or so, we continue to do this periodically, giving you updates on what we've accomplished and what work is being done to implement the recommendations and the work that everybody put in.
Great, thanks, Tom. What questions do people have?
As we go forward, we'll be able to add some more best management practices to the document.
Yes, I think that's our intent, and that's what we've been discussing. As we certainly as things evolve, as science evolves, and we all learn as a staff learn new things. I think that's, and the committee as well. I think it's prudent to keep it updated and like Susan's, I think, referred to it as a living, breathing document. I think that's the best way best way anybody's put it.
Okay, any other questions? Great, thank you, and congratulations on getting to this point.
Thank you.
I wanted to next move on to the status of the potential Meadowwood acquisition. And I'll start with the update, and please fill in. But right now, the Trust for Public Land continues to work to secure the grant funding that would make the acquisition possible. They did a presentation to the Board of Finance last month. And I anticipate that if this eventually does go to referendum, it would go to referendum in the spring. Maria or anyone else, is there anything you would add?
Will there be any, I have a question.
Yeah, so Helen.
Oh, You said it went to the Board of Finance. Is there an opportunity, anytime coming forward that you know of, that we could have a chance to speak to the Board of Finance, or let's say exchange thoughts with them? Or is it on their agenda coming again or not?
That's a good question. And if I can, I'll punt that question to Maria.
Helen, we did have some groups recently send correspondence directly to the Board of Finance. And then our finance director included that correspondence in their packet under communications. So I think that if the committee as a whole wanted to send something, or individual committee members wanted to send a letter, we could certainly include that. We did forward to the Board of Finance all of the referrals, which included the positive referral that the Open Space Committee had provided. So they do have your positive referral on the acquisition. In fact, all but one of the commissions had provided positive referrals. One was a split decision. But for the other, I believe 5 committees, including yours, that had reviewed it, they were, again, positive referrals, and we had provided that to the Board of Finance. They actually don't have public audience during their meetings. And so that's why a few of those other groups had sent written correspondence that we did, like I said, at least include as part of their packet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would encourage anyone who favors or opposes this project to write a letter. It can be read out loud at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but I would also copy the Board of Finance, since they're also a critical part of the process.
Is that an ongoing invitation?
Ongoing, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that there was a general sentiment on the Board of Finance that ideally we would include this project with all of our other capital requests at the same time, which is what we normally do during budget season. And I think the question is whether the landowner would be willing to let us wait those additional months before finalizing the deal. So that's really where we're at right now. Are there any other questions?
Eric, I've been working on that analysis, which might be helpful just to pull up. I could quickly pull that up. I was just thinking I could share that spreadsheet just in comparison to some of our other recent acquisitions. So something that staff has been working on, and I'm going to say that this is still a draft. We're still polishing the draft, but we wanted to take a look in terms of affordability. We've heard some questions, is this project affordable, et cetera. And so we were doing an analysis at some of our other recent large acquisitions in terms of town investment versus grants that were available. And we were really honest with the Trust for Public Land when they had approached us, and looking at some of our debt modeling, we're very candid and had shared that probably anything in excess of $2 to $3 million from the town contribution might be very difficult for us to come up with, again, based on what we were looking at for future debt modeling. And so I'm just going to screen share. Tom, can you allow me to screen share?
You should be able to now.
Great, thank you. It'll just take me a moment here. For some reason, I'm not seeing my screen share button. Oh, there it is. So again, this is still a draft, but it is something that we're working on. And we also did a couple of scenarios, including adjusting for the present value of dollars. And the Ethel Walker acquisition was done in 3 parts in terms of town financing. We also included, we call it the triangle purchase, which was about 78 acres, and then the potential Meadowwood purchase. And again, these were in recent times sort of our more, our larger acquisitions. And if you look at the Ethel Walker subtotal here, you'll see that town funds were about 88% of the overall investment. And when you average out, and this is again, sorry, this is also present value dollars that we had adjusted for, that the average cost per acre was just a little over $26,000, and the town's all in was just under $23,000 per acre for Ethel Walker. For the triangle, you'll note that the town invested 100% of the funds for that purchase, that we were not able to find any evidence of grants that were used to help with that acquisition. So in present value of the dollar, the town's all-in cost per acre was a little over $50,000 for that particular acquisition. And this is where I think TPL has just done such a phenomenal job understanding what our financial constraints were and really aggressively and actively pursuing, funding from nonprofits, different grant sources. Again, this project's been carved up into some really neat pieces: the historic preservation component, the ag component, the open space and trails component, as well as preserving, right, some of the acres for future recreational use. So in this scenario, if we were to proceed with the purchase, the town's all-in contribution is actually just under 37% of the total funds for the acquisition. And then the town's cost per acre for this would be just over $7,600. So I think that's really phenomenal, and really want to credit TPL for their hard work in determining and finding other revenue sources for us to help make this vision become a reality. So again, this is still a draft. We're polishing up these final numbers. We also have the chart in the value of the dollar at the time in which it was purchased. So obviously that's a little different, but we thought it was important to sort of run the analysis and both ways. So again, once we polish this up, it is something we do hope to share more widely with other groups. We do think it's a powerful analysis that really, again, helps to illustrate, I think, the value that we would be getting in purchasing this particular property.
So, Maria, I really want to commend you on putting this together, because this really brings home the value we're getting in the acquisition of this very special parcel. It's not only a special parcel, but I feel like, compared to a couple of the other purchases, we're walking away with a super deal. So great analysis. This definitely needs to be presented as we move forward.
Thank you.
Totally.
Maria, this is Helen. Could I request, could you email us a copy of this document so we can have it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll make sure I mark it as draft, but I will forward it to you all.
And this information certainly can help the townspeople and the Board of Finance, for sure, to understand what it would cost the town eventually if it were to be developed, as opposed to what it's going to cost us to keep it natural and to conserve it. This is a very good piece of information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maria, just as a question of how to handle the information contained herein, it is a draft. I would assume that we would not yet want this disseminated to the general public until you authorize us or let us know that that's appropriate.
I mean, if you shared it as a draft, Eric, I don't know. I mean, I think that's probably okay. But again, I think this is pretty close to final, which is why I felt comfortable sharing it with you all. But we're just, trying to sharpen our pencils. But I do think this is pretty close to final, and it may, in fact, ultimately be the final version.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Maria.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or thoughts on Meadowwood before we move on?
Yeah, I had two small comments. For the draft that you just shared, the Ethel Walker property also included almost $3 million in private fundraising. So that might change your figures a little bit on that. So I just wanted to put that on the table. But the Meadowwood numbers look great. And on the issue of affordability, I know one of the, perceived conflicts, which really pains me, is that we shouldn't do this preserved Meadowwood because we need affordable housing. And I want to find a way to kind of reorient people that there's no reason why we can't have both issues. Maybe they don't both need to be on this entire property. And I wanted to ask, since Mike is on the phone, is there any discussion in the planning committee? I mean, there's a number of ways that we can do affordable housing. And I know some of the discussions in other areas are on kind of accessory dwelling units. So you could have something for an in-law or, a rental on your property. Is that are there any discussions of that in the planning commission? Because I'm wondering if here's my final thing. Even if we put affordable housing on Meadowwood, my understanding is we don't reach the threshold of 9% or whatever it is that's considered the threshold for a number of different things. So it's not going to solve that problem necessarily. So anyway, Mike, that's my question.
So the Planning Commission's working on updating or creating a affordable housing plan for Simsbury, which the community is required to develop once every 5 years pursuant to 8-30J of general state statutes. But that's really in conformance with 8-30G, which is the statute that says 10% of your total housing stock has to be deemed affordable, whether it's deed restricted units or units that are receiving government assistance one way or another, rental assistance, etc. Simsbury right now, we're at like a very healthy 4.74%, and not looking like we're going to make the 10%, because that in this, if we were to in order to get to 10%, we'd have to add 481 affordable units in 1 year. And that would get us to 10% based on current household numbers. Now, so you're right in the sense that you build Meadowwood, we're not going to solve the affordable housing issue as it relates to the 10% number pursuant to 830G of the general state statutes. But the affordable housing plan is really, it's supposed to be given a direction to the community saying, so how are we going to improve the atmosphere for affordable housing? What are specific goals that we have? And I don't want to steal or give too much of a surprise of what's going in this plan, because the Planning Commission is planning on having a public listening session, potentially on October 27th. But they are working on a draft plan right now. Does that answer your question, Susan? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess it does. I just don't want to see, I don't want to see open space pitted against affordable housing. There's ways to kind of solve this problem without, throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I can't agree more, Susan. And I've had a lot of conversations, really just trying to, I can support both of these issues, but I think we need to separate them. Were there any other questions on Meadowwood? Okay, the last oral report is on the disposition of a parcel near 133 Holcomb Street. I can start. The Board of Selectmen voted 5-1 to move forward with the selling that parcel to the abutting homeowner. What we essentially did was ask the town manager to negotiate with the abutting property owner and bring an agreement back to the Board of Selectmen. And one of the things we asked was to ensure that the bike path easement would be part of that agreement. So we were looking at the whole thing holistically, because ultimately we were moving forward with that disposition to ensure that the bike path would be able to move forward on schedule. I wanted to see if there were questions on this item.
Timeline, just tell me if there was any timeline anticipated to get that renegotiation done.
Maria?
Sure, we are working on that now. It's currently in our town attorney's hands. He is working on a draft outline, if you will, of the agreement. So it is something I expect and would hope that we might be able to have wrapped up no later than the end of the calendar year. But he is currently working on it for us.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to reassert my position that I think this should be an even swap.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks.
Agreed.
Any other thoughts before I move on? Okay. So 4 is on policies and policies work group. And in the packet is what I thought was a beautiful draft of the natural stewardship policy. Wanted to ask if Susan or Marjorie, who are on that work group, wanted to add any context before we discuss.
You're talking about the draft that's in the policy part, right? In
Correct,
the
yeah.
format.
Yep.
I'm going to be super honest that I didn't really do my homework well ahead of time, but I think, I mean, I just feel like to be responsible, what I should really do is look over it with comparison to the original document, which we would probably tack onto it somehow anyway, just to see if there's any key things in the original document that should be reflected in kind of the excerpt that's in the policy. So I haven't had time to do that fully. I just want to admit that.
Okay, thanks, Susan.
I have a question.
Helen.
Question. I was a little bit surprised at the brevity. In other words, I expected something of a longer document. Is this like the preamble or is this it? That's question number one.
Susan, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that this is an attempt to get that longer document into kind of the standard format that we have for town policies. If we just line it up in our, like, I don't know, policy binder or whatever, however those exist, but that the longer one could be like an appendix or an addendum or whatever. So we're not throwing that longer thing out. We're just trying to get the key points in a policy format. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's what Maria's office was trying to do with that. I think in the longer document, it would be good for us to define what natural area stewardship means as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just a term in this policy.
Yeah, exactly. And it had those references too, which I think are very helpful if you want to look up more information and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the draft that's in our packet, I thought that it definitely reflected the spirit of what we're trying to do and what we discussed, but I think it would be wise to especially have Susan's eyes on that before we were to move forward with it. And you know, it was also suggested that as we're discussing the agricultural leases and possibly some related matters, that we sort of take those as a group to the Board of Selectmen. And I know, Susan, that was your suggestion. So I would be, yeah, were you going to say something, Susan?
I was just going to say, it seems like there's a number of kind of things that are almost baked, and maybe it might be nice to say, here's our like various plans, you know, and kind of like we just did the master plan, and here's the policies for the types of land that they, you know, identified and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's just a suggestion. I don't have a super strong feeling about that, but I feel like we're close on a couple of other things too.
I guess my second question would be, because of the issue that I don't have that draft in front of me because I don't know how to raise it here on my screen while I'm talking to you, but I'm referring to paragraph 2, where it limits the application, the intent that this would be only for the 4 major forests that we have in our inventory. And how do you expect to implement a stewardship policy such as you're stating here in a more general, where do you allow for that? That's where I am questioning the brevity, because I feel like it might leave some, it doesn't, well, I don't know how I'm phrasing my question well enough for you or not, but those 2 points, the point that it does not address other areas in town as well.
Helen, I can answer it. I'll try to crack that, Maria. I think the next sentence gives the Board of Selectmen and your committee the flexibility to remove or add other parcels as
I
necessary.
saw that. Okay. I
think that's where you get that flexibility is, you know, it could be next month that we could add more, or it could be a year from now, or we could decide, you know, however the committee just chooses to do so. I think what the intent was here was to give a starting point of the big 4, so to speak, and then move on from there, adding as there's time to review thoughtfully and recommend those parcels to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion here.
And
Excellent. Go ahead, Marjorie.
I think also at the last working group, we decided we'd go with those 4 because they were the ones that were targeted for management. And the other piece properties were not targeted for management at this point.
Okay. Thank you for those explanations. As far as the draft as a whole, I see that you're going in the right direction. I thank you for your efforts. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to ask. 2 pages only. So it's a working in other words, it's a overall stewardship policy, and that the application to the actual inventory of the town can be handled beyond that. In other words, individually. So everything is covered literally, in essence. Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I can go along with that. Thank you so much for the explanation.
When you look at the parcels that are on the, in the document, were there any others that instantly came to mind to anyone that you think should be added?
Well, we had talked at the last working group about the Darlington property and the land behind, that's on the ridge behind the house that we own. There's like 20 some acres there. I don't know the name of that property. And then also that one that's,
Tanager Hill?
no,
No?
it's on the west side of town. I don't know the name of it. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? We talked about 3 other spots.
Yeah, the Darlington properties at the end of Sugarloaf Cut, directly across from the intersection of West Mountain Road and Sugarloaf Cut. It's up behind there. Is that the one you're talking about, Susan?
That's not the Darlington one, but that is
Darling's
what I'm
off-
talking about.
Darling's off of, is that the Farms, West Street, Farms Village by the high school? On
Right.
the southern side. Yeah, that's one. The other one you're talking about it's a parcel that we own. It's on the ridge. It's accessible by, I got to remember the road now. It doesn't have a name. It's just a parcel that we own. And you're correct, because it was, if I recall, it's a greater than 20 acres that's up there. But we have a smaller parcel that abuts it too. I can get that information. I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Were you proposing that we add those additional parcels to the document once we clarify what their names are?
I kind of think why not? Because we did already discuss those at the last meeting, that it makes sense to add those. We kind of went over the whole map.
Yeah.
There's another one, I think the name starts with an S, that's over by the Metacom Trail. We can deal with this offline, figuring out the names and all that stuff, but we did discuss those are the only ones that I remember that made sense.
Susan, do you want to connect after this meeting and we could try to identify, even provide maps for what parcels we're talking about?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd appreciate Mike absolutely providing a map. I think the 4 that we named were the ones that we're all very familiar with and may have even been, on them and walked through them. Because I'd certainly like an opportunity to identify the other properties and then perhaps go out there myself.
And we discussed that at the last meeting, that we really needed a map to do that.
Okay, great. Really nice work on moving this forward. What's the rough timeline on the additional pieces, so the farm leases and anything else the committee is working on?
Well, I know I submitted something last time at the working group, but it wasn't really the topic of the working group last time. So I have gathered more information on mowing practices for meadows, whether it's for grassland birds or for pollinators. And I figured we'd be discussing that at the next working group.
Okay, great. And I want to hold that thought for a second. When we get to it, I'll ask you a question. The next topic was the agricultural leases. Was there an update that anyone wanted to provide for this meeting?
Well, I had submitted something at the last meeting, the working group. There's a lot of good information out there for showing what different towns are doing, different types of leases. I'm not quite sure how we make. I'm curious about the process for making that decision, because there are a variety of leases. There's short-term, long-term, rotating leases, and one of the suggestions from the information that the groups that were talking about agricultural leases was coming up with a farm committee. We need another committee, so that there would be the opportunity for farmers. I'm not sure if they want to take part, but farmers, or just have some oversight of it. Because I think at the last meeting we also learned that I think the town engineer had been in charge of the leases. There should be a better process than that. And it also, it was an establishment of what kind of goals did you want to say it was going to be organic. A lot of times with the farmers, if they have a short lease, they can't put the effort in to do the upgrades for the farms that are needed to really make it organic, or to improve the soil fertility. So I was kind of curious myself as to how we would, is this the committee that determines the farm leases? Should I, when I write it up, should I be making a recommendation, or yeah, I'm not.
Susan?
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe you weren't at those meetings. It was like me, Mike, and Tim.
Yeah, I missed one. Yeah. I missed
Yeah. So we basically went through a bunch of things. I have a whole stack of stuff of, examples from other towns. And we basically decided the principles that we wanted to do the best we could to support the local farmers. And that would mean simple forms,
Yes.
longer leases. We wouldn't necessarily require organic, but it would be like organic or transition to organic, or farmers pledge, which is kind of like a standard that people use as a, maybe might not 100% be organic, but it's an intention for healthy farming. And what we wanted to do is pull the best parts from other towns. Mike had some pretty good stuff from Wallingford. So we just kind of need to cobble that together based on those principles that we want to support. And I think we could have one meeting and just nail that down.
That'd be good.
What are the
And then the
changes
other thing
that,
was,
I'm sorry, Helen, please. Helen, were you going to say something?
No, I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
that was
No,
me
I think
still,
that's
that was me.
All right.
That was me still blabbing. And then the other thing that we never finalized was that 15-point checklist thing. So like a goal would be to bring to the next meeting, the format for the ag lease, the updated ag lease terms, and, policy and lease terms, and then the 15-point checklist for policies for acquiring open space. What are the values? And then once we get those nailed down, we can move on to, the mowing thing, which I don't think would be too difficult. You need different things for birds versus pollinators. And then we can move on to the less pleasant issues. But I think other people have already done this for us, and we can kind of see what works for Simsbury in terms of like encroachment and dumping and things like that, just so that we have rules for all that stuff.
This is a little arbitrary, but it would be nice to perhaps tackle one of those each month and then bring them back to the committee to review for feedback, just to keep things moving. Obviously not to shortchange anything, but it's real nice on the stewardship policy, for example, to see the progress on that. And then I think to be able to bring those as a package to the Board of Selectmen would be really nice. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you. That was an excellent recap, Susan, just now. Off top of your head, that was quite an outline that you just gave us. So I think that was excellent. And thank you for all your hard work, all of you. And I guess we have the makings of the beginning of a toolbox for us.
Awesome. Pollinator Pathway Program, possible grants. I've got some thoughts on this item that I wanted to share with the group, but I wanted to see if the work group or anyone else had any update first. No. Okay. So the Board of Selectmen, as I said before, has supporting pollinator pathways as one of their goals. And I've had an interest, and I know the Marjorie, I'm forgetting the official name of the organization, and shame on me.
New England Pollinator Pathway.
New England Pollinator Pathway has a real interest in doing a showcase project in town that would be visible and a way to sort of demonstrate to the public some of the value. And one area that was suggested, or one project, is a wildflower garden along the median on Iron Horse. And my understanding is that there is that item is in the capital improvement plan in out years for some kind of an installation on the median. And it was suggested possibly that could be a showcase project. I don't know, potentially that would, there could be cost savings there. There are pictures, especially in European countries, that do this more than we do. It looks really good. And the mowing would certainly be less onerous than it is right now. And I wanted to just sort of, pun intended, plant the seed with this group that that's something that this work group could take on, not now, but a little bit down the road, in kind of advising and shepherding this process. And I'm not trying to be prescriptive. Maybe that's not the right showcase project, but it's an idea.
I think you might find you have a lot of support from the PAC for the Performing Arts Center to limit the number of folks hanging out on the during concerts. I see a funding source coming already.
But it also goes to, I mean, we can have this would be another aspect for policy. I know that was recently work done along Town Forest Road. There was a laying of a pipe, I don't know, it was a water pipe for aquarium. And there was a lot of disturbance on the side of the road, and it happened to be on the sunny side of the road. And then it was reseeded with grass. That was an opportunity to reseed with a conservation mix rather than grass. So I think anytime we have those opportunities along a roadside, we that could be a policy too, that we could think about those things rather than the traditional just sow it with grass seed.
So add it to the list of the never-ending work group. But I think, no, I say that in jest, but I think that the items we discussed clearly, like the short-term priorities, but I think that this could be an opportunity for this committee to continue to add value in this area. Any other thoughts on pollinator pathways? Okay. Any other business before we adjourn? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So Susan's hand. Is that a second? All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
All right. I wish everyone a good night. See you next month.
Thanks.